to the latest episode of New Cool Film Reviews. This Thursday, the 17th of September 2020.
That's the
Today,
date.
we're talking about The Devil All the Time, directed by Antonio Campos, and starring Tom Holland, Bill Skarsgård, Robert Pattinson, Eliza Scanlen, Sebastian Stan, and a whole range of other famous people that you probably know. This movie was just released yesterday on Netflix, so on the 16th of September 2020. And here are our impressions on that. Just quickly, while I've got you, you might not know who we are. We are stars of the podcast, Film's Cool podcast, that airs every single Wednesday. I've got with me one and only Josh J. Luke. How you doing, Josh?
Not bad, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. And yeah, I'm Adam, King Frogby. You can follow me on Letterboxd. You can follow Josh on Letterboxd. What do you think? What do you think of this movie? Oh, I guess actually, do you want to just read the Letterboxd description on what the film is?
I was going to say, I'll just read the Letterboxd description because I don't know if it's going to affect people's sort of viewing if they go in blind on this one. It's sort of a movie that doesn't really matter, I don't think. But we've got here in Knockemstiff. Was that the name of the town? Knockemstiff.
In Ohio.
Ohio. And its neighbouring backwoods, sinister characters converge around young Arvin Russell, played by Tom Holland, as he fights the evil forces that threaten him and his family. And I'm just going to say right off the bat that makes this sound like it's going to be way more interesting than it is. I'm not saying this is a bad movie, but that write-up made it feel like there was going to be something supernatural, but I'm just going to spoil it right now. There's definitely not.
So it's like middle America, and it just follows like a religious family. Like, that's probably the...
Religious fanaticism was definitely one of the big sort of themes here. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'll just go off and say it. It's a good movie.
It is.
Like it's hard to say that I would recommend like everyone go out and watch this. Like you have to sort of like, I don't know. It's not an enjoyable film by any means, and I think that like you got to know that going into it.
Yeah, it's one of those real bleak times where you're really seeing the shit part of humanity, and they don't really give you any reprieve from that. There's no real nice, fluffy moments that I can think of in here. But I would say, yeah, this is a good movie. And I said this before to you before we started. This is a good movie that thinks it's a great movie. And if you've ever watched a movie like that before, you'll know what I'm talking about. I have no doubt that this movie is going to get the shit hyped out of it. They're going to talk about this like it's a star-changing role for Tom Holland, like he's really stepping outside his comfort zone, all this sort of stuff. They're going to say, oh, Robert Pattinson was amazing. But I honestly believe that's just because we're starved for content a little bit at the moment.
Especially in 2020, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we discussed that quite a bit, that especially with Tom Holland, like, because this is not something that we have sort of seen him do before. And I think it was... I think he wet his feet.
But I think he was really good. But I think Tom Holland is a really good actor. And I guess nothing he did surprised me. I'm like, yeah, this is just a Tom Holland role where he's punching people and punching a few darts too.
Yeah. Yeah, he does take a cigarette like he means it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he definitely does. And with Robert Pattinson as well, I think this will certainly shock the people who are still stuck on the Twilight Zone crowd.
Well,
but
yeah,
with what he's been in recently, this isn't sort of outside the box. He's very, very good in it, but for someone who hated Robert Pattinson for probably a lot of my life, he's done a quick turnaround over the last few years, and I have a very high bar for Robert Pattinson. And yeah, he gets there. Perfectly adequate.
So this, like my only reference for Robert Pattinson is Twilight. So, and I know that he's done lots of artsy films. I just haven't seen them. Like, I know that he did like The Lighthouse, which has got raving reviews.
Check him out in good time. So I'll say that because his character here, piece of shit. Absolute piece of shit, right?
Yep.
One of the biggest pieces of shit. In good time, he may be a arguably bigger piece of shit.
Wow. Okay.
But
because I would have loved more of him in this film. Like,
yeah.
I think that and I mentioned to you, he stood out, like his role, like, and the way he portrayed that character, sort of like I was like, whoa, like, man, he's really like dark and convincing. Like he's doing the part, but he was such like a small slither of this film. He was in it for like what? I reckon he probably only had 20 minutes screen time, if that.
Oh, I wouldn't even say that. Probably 15 minutes screen time max. And even the scenes he was in, they were short. But having said that, this movie, in my eyes, didn't need more of anything. It needed less of a lot. So there's the way this story is told. There's a lot of intertwining sort of storylines, and they sort of end up converging towards the end. It's one of those sort of films, and I just feel like one of them could have almost been completely cut from the film.
Yeah. Like one of the storylines was overly convoluted. I also always find these sorts of films a bit on the nose when it all starts out and they all are in the same spot, and then it ends up and they are like progeny all end up in the same spot, and all within like a 24-hour window. And it's just like, like, surely we could have done something a little bit different.
Yeah. And that is one of my big criticisms of this film, is it's really not that original as well. I mean, this movie is influenced by a whole bunch of movies, and I wrote that in my Letterboxd review, but very, very strong Coen Brothers influence. There Will Be Blood is a better movie to watch if you want that bleak sort of feeling. This is a lot like No Country for Old Men. One of the sort of storylines completely rips off Natural Born Killers by Oliver Stone. And I also wrote there was a few Marta McDonagh beats in this movie, because, like, definitely with the narration, I got a strong Seven Psychopaths sort of thing. And even a lot of it felt like a less funny Seven Psychopaths to me.
Yeah. Like, I definitely see, like, lots of inspiration.
For parts of it, I was like, I feel like I'm watching Three Billboards again. And I don't... Maybe that's just because I was getting the Marta McDonagh read, but it definitely had that sort of... I guess that would also come from the bleakness and the sort of no-hopeness.
Yeah. And maybe,
which,
like,
again,
the
I feel like...
maybe.
Again, though, I feel like that film does better than this film.
Oh, yeah. The leaps and bounds. It's hard because, like, as a Netflix film, this is, like...
Great.
This is great. This
is one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
As a film, it's 20 to 30 minutes too long.
Yep.
There's a bunch of people who they paid to show up to do a role that they could have just cast anyone in. Like, Mia Wasikowska, I can never say her name, but she shows up and she's in maybe 2 scenes and that's it, she's gone. Like, you could have got anyone to play that role. You could have given someone a chop out.
And, like, Dudley Weasley was... Or not Dudley Weasley.
Yeah. Dudley
Dursley. Yeah, from Harry Potter.
Doesn't do a bad role, but... Actually, no, I like that casting decision because he's done... I looked at his...
He was better in The Order, guys. Come on.
He hasn't done much at all since, has he?
No.
Strange looking dude. But he would definitely be the strangest looking dude in any movie if Jason Clarke wasn't also in this movie. Is there a weirder looking dude on Earth than Jason Clarke?
No. And, like, this is the brother, right? The guy playing the guitar? Am I...
No. Jason Clarke's the Aussie guy who... Him and his wife are the sort of storyline we're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
He just looks like he's run face first into a brick wall a few times.
Yeah, it's real weird teeth.
Flat, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of, like, if there's anything else. Like, I do actually... Like, if you're in for, like, a darker, like, more story-driven film, I'd check this out. You definitely don't go into it thinking you're gonna have a happy evening, though.
I will say we may be being overly critical of this film because I still gave it a 3.5. But when you're watching the film, this is a film that wants you to take it critically. Like, this is trying to be that higher end of cinema. And it doesn't quite reach it, but it doesn't fall flat on its face doing so.
Yeah, and I think like this year especially, we've been starved of this sort of cinema, so it was kind of nice to
see a new movie.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, it's really compelling all the way through. Like,
it took me a good half an hour to get into it.
But you know what I mean? Like, it does get you to a level of investment where you're like, I want to see what happens.
And I feel like the worst part about it is Bill Skarsgård, I think, put in potentially the best performance in the whole film, and it was in the 30 minutes that I couldn't have given less of a fuck about. Like,
if I was Sebastian's,
I'll get into that. I'll get into Sebastian in 1 second. But with the first half an hour of the film, I'm watching this, and I was thinking, if Bill Skarsgård wasn't carrying this right now, and I wasn't watching this for a podcast, I don't know if I would have just kept going on a first viewing. But get past that, it's a pretty good movie. As for my old mate Sebastian Stan, I've never seen a more bland person in my life. I was literally forgetting between scenes that he was in the film.
And he plays like the boring old cop who's just like doing the wrong thing.
And you think like his sort of the corrupt part of his storyline will give it a bit... It makes it even more boring. Yeah. Like, he is the most boring part of this film. This film doesn't have too many boring parts, I wouldn't say. I think the experience on a whole can be a bit of a drag by the end. But Sebastian Stan is unequivocally boring in this film.
Mm.
And also, he has real puffy cheeks. Have you ever noticed that? I was watching this movie, and there's that one... This isn't a spoiler, but he gets into a fight with a security guard. And after that scene, I was looking at his cheeks, I'm like, has he been like this the whole time? Or did you get roughed up a bit in this scene? Because
also, he's Winter Soldier, yeah. Like,
he is absolutely...
He looks nothing like it.
Nothing like it. Has none of the charisma at all. Like, nothing.
Yeah, for some reason, like, I think this is where you strike, like, I would have loved to have seen, like, Woody Harrelson playing his, like, three billboards role.
Mm. No. Give me
Sam Rockwell?
Sam Rockwell. Give me Sam Rockwell in that role, and you have got, cinema magic.
Yeah.
Sebastian Stan, see, this will be one of those things where you'd say you'd have to take him away from his other role, but Robin Pattinson would have played that role better than Sebastian Stan.
Mm.
But I guess because you may think he wasn't old enough. But at the same time, there's one part of this movie where it gets to a certain point at the end, and I'm just sort of remembering what's happened throughout the film. And I'm thinking about Sebastian Stan and how old he should be at this point in the film. And I'm like,
something. They don't age. Like, lots of time passes, but there's that set of people don't really age that much. Like, they put some heavier makeup on them.
I don't even know if they did on Sebastian Stan. Or they grow
some like stubble, maybe. Well, yeah, Sebastian Stan.
I'm assuming the aging process of this film, because they age Sebastian Stan, well, they're supposed to age him at least 10 years, if not 12.
Mm.
I would say. Actually, no, I don't think it is that long. I think it was only like 6. But this is one of those ones where, because we know how old Tom Holland really is, it makes it sort of harder. So he's probably supposed to be younger here.
Yeah, I think they said like he was 17 or something.
Yeah, no, it didn't come off as 17.
17, no.
But yeah, I think the way they aged Sebastian Stan was they would have been like, Sebastian, stay up for 2 nights, and then we'll film the scene. Because he just had a few bags under his eyes and looked like he'd done a bit of coke, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think that like probably I always like it when there's like religious like fanaticism like throughout.
The themes of this movie are sick. That's the thing. They could have done so much more with it, but what they did with it was good. there's one other thing that I've just thought of that I found really strange is this is a period piece, right? It's set in the 50s and 60s, but for 3/4 of the film, it could have just been 2020.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't.
This is
They do nothing to immerse you in the generation because by the end of it, there's a scene where Sebastian Stan asks someone for candy, right? And I was like, oh, he's asking for Coke. And then I remember, I'm like, this is the 50s. But they're in an 80s looking kitchen. I don't get it.
the only thing that made it like feel oldie was that he was using a film camera. That was like the only like touchstone throughout that I was like, oh yeah. There was no like using phone booth. There was nothing like that. It was
And the cars, but the cars are like the easiest one. Like that's such.
But like I always like when I picture Middle America, I picture people even now driving these weird cars and like the setting looking like that for some reason. Like I feel like in my head, Middle America's like really regressive. And like I always wonder like with the whole religion like fanaticism.
Yeah.
Like obviously we're seeing a lot of that nowadays. It's like I just feel like these sorts of movies like must make you feel like crap if you live in those sorts of areas. Like you must no wonder like yeah.
Like I would honestly rather live in, say, Utah with a bunch of Mormons than anywhere close to this sort of bullshit, backwoods, crazy Christian shit.
Yeah. Like where they just have like preachers come in. It's all.
Like I love the narration when the preacher comes in, the Robert Pattinson preacher, because it just straight up tells you that he's a cunt and does not care about anything really, just about the power of being in that position.
Being in charge.
But I found also the narration was quite tonally confusing as well. Because again, like I felt like you could have this narration felt like it was out of a movie like Seven Psychopaths, where you sort of like, this is dark comedy, we're taking the piss satire. But the movie itself is really bleak and has no comedy beats at all.
Yeah, it was definitely like I interpreted the narration as like serious.
He has such a smart-assy tone about him though at the same time. I can't think of a specific example, but
I know what you mean. Like the bit with Robert Pattinson, right, with the livers.
Yeah,
and
or
like,
the bit where
yes.
I can't remember what exactly he says, but he would do one of those like that old school comedy where it's like, but neither did either person know they were fucked. Like that's a dark comedy beat. Like,
yeah,
and this isn't a dark comedy. You don't need someone telling you that. Oh, look at these people, dumb decisions they've made led to this. We know. And I actually liked the narration. I thought it was one of the better parts of the film, but it's quite tonally confusing to me.
Yeah. Look, like, I think this is one of those ones where, like, it's definitely worth a watch. Check it out for yourself.
It is, because it made me think about it. Like, I've been thinking about this today.
Yeah, we had a very long conversation about it.
It didn't help the movie's cause, because the more I thought about it, the more I started analysing it and seeing its flaws rather than what made it good. But again, that's one of the issues of the system of reviewing film, is you got to look at it and realise that because I could imagine there will be some people dropping 5s on this, and it does not warrant it at all.
I was just looking through the reviews, and it's there are quite a few, but it's sitting at about a 3.5. I'm personally putting this movie at a 3.
I am thinking about dropping it to a 3, but I'll keep it at a 3.5 for now. That's not a ridiculous score, I don't think. I can justify a 3.5.
Yeah.
The fact that I had so much passion in thinking about it made me sort of think that it might have been a bit better, but I think this is a movie that for your real cinema sort of addicts, they're going to notice a lot of flaws in it that your regular viewer wouldn't.
But they're also hungry for it, so like it couldn't have dropped at a better time.
Yeah, exactly. We want something, and well, Tom Holland wasn't so far out of the box. At least he is getting to do something different. And for a lot of people, they're going to completely disagree with me on that and be like, Tom Holland, completely different to what we're used to, and I hope he gets that reaction.
Yeah, yeah. I'm keen to see what projects he has lined up next in a similar vein, in a more serious tone, because I just enjoyed what he was doing, and I want to see more of it.
I would like to see him and Robin Pattinson just talk in their regular accents together.
Yeah,
That'd be a
that'd
good
be
movie.
probably nice. Awesome. Well, that's probably a pretty good place to stop. Thanks so much
Great
for
stuff.
listening. Oh, thanks so much for the conversation, Josh. But
You
thanks
too,
so
Adam.
much for listening to this episode of new cool film reviews. This episode is obviously live. You can follow us. All of our information is in the description below. And hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the devil all the time.
Try to at least.